Okay. Welcome everyone to today's very special webinar, the Israel-Iran War and its Aftermath, a New Middle East. I'm Dr. Stephen Sussman, Professor of Public Administration at Barry University's Andreas School of Business and Public Administration in Miami, Florida, and a research fellow at the Institute for the Study of Global Anti-Semitism and Policy. Together with my colleague, Dr. Luis Fleischman, we co-founded the Palm Beach Center for Democracy and Policy Research to serve as a forum for the free exchange of ideas and informed dialogue on the critical challenges of our time. Beyond being a think tank, we are a collaborative community of scholars, experts, and stakeholders dedicated to developing balanced and practical solutions to today's pressing issues. While I'm doing this, I'm keeping an eye on who's coming in. Admit all. There we go. Okay. At the heart of our mission are three core values. Diversity. We believe that welcoming diverse voices and perspectives is key to meaningful debate. Balance. Our platform prioritizes thoughtful, inclusive dialogue over partisan divides. And community. We aim to bring people together, academics, professionals, decision makers, and civil society leaders to share ideas and create impactful change. You can explore our work, including recordings of past webinars and published articles, on our website at palmbeachdemocracy.org. While you're there, consider supporting us as a 501c3 nonprofit. Your generous contributions enable us to continue our work, including hosting timely and impactful programs like this. Today's program will explore the geopolitical fallout of the Israel-Iran war and what it means for the future of the Middle East. At a time of rapidly shifting alliances, escalating tensions, and global uncertainty, this discussion could not be more timely or important. We're so honored to be joined by a distinguished panel of experts. I'm going to do a short bio so we have more time for discussion. Eric Navarro is a former military and strategy program, is director of military and strategy programs at the Middle East Forum. He's a seasoned military officer, business leader, and national security strategist, a lieutenant colonel in the Marine Corps Reserves. Mr. Navarro served 2 combat terms in Iraq and has led countless training evaluations, technology initiatives, and real-world operations around the globe. He has an MBA from NYU Stern School of Business and an MS in National Security Strategy from the National War College. And he is also the author of a book titled God Willing, detailing his experience as one of the first embedded advisors to the new Iraqi army. He's a frequent media contributor with articles and appearances focused on national security strategy and the use of American power in a contested geopolitical environment. Dr. Joseph Olmert is a Middle East scholar, former Israeli peace negotiator, and a highly published author and journalist. He earned his PhD from the London School of Economics. Dr. Olmert is Professor Emeritus in Political Science at the University of South Carolina. Prior to this, he had an international academic teaching career in Israel, Canada, and the United States, where he taught at City University of New York, Cornell, American University, among others. In Israel, he headed the Syria and Lebanon desks at Tel Aviv University's Moshe Dayan Center for Middle Eastern and African Studies, where he served on the faculty. Dr. Olmert is also a senior fellow, board member, and advisor here at the Palm Beach Center. Dr. Liora Hendelman-Baavur is a leading historian of modern Iran and senior research fellow at the Alliance Center for Iranian Studies at Tel Aviv University, where she served as director from 2019 to 2023. Her research focuses on gender, media, and state aesthetics in 20th and 21st century Iran. She is the author of Creating the Modern Iranian Woman, which received the 2022 Book Award from the Association for Iranian Studies. She's currently completing a monograph on the cultural politics of the Pahlavi era and has a chapter forthcoming with Oxford University Press titled Processes and Implications for the Israeli-Palestinian Conflict. Dr. Robert Rabil is professor of Middle East Studies at Florida Atlantic University and a distinguished professor of current events with the Lifelong Learning Society at FAU. He holds a doctorate in Near Eastern and Judaic Studies from Brandeis and a master's in government from Harvard Extension School. A prolific author and expert on political Islam, terrorism, and U.S. Middle East relations, Dr. Rabil has written extensively on Syria, Lebanon, Iran, and Israel, and is a frequent contributor to national media and policy forums. Professor Rabil is also a board member and senior fellow here at the Palm Beach Center for Democracy and Policy Research. Moderating today's discussion is my colleague and co-founder of the Palm Beach Center, Dr. Luis Fleischman. He is a professor of sociology at Palm Beach State College and co-president here at the center. He is the author of The Middle East Riddle, a widely cited book that examines the ideological and strategic forces shaping the region. The panelists finish their presentations. You may ask questions by raising your virtual hand or by typing your question in the chat box. I will now turn the program over to Luis, who will be moderating today's discussion. Once again, thank you all for joining us. Luis, you're up.
Thank you so much, Steve. Welcome to the program, The Iran-Israel War, A New Middle East. First of all, I want to thank our distinguished panel for being here to discuss this critical issue, and the audience for joining us on the eve of a national holiday. Thank you so much. We have a huge audience this afternoon. Several questions arose after the war, also called the 12-Day War. What was unique about this war? What kind of consequences could it have for the future? What is the future of Iran's proxies and terrorist groups in the Middle East? Will the regime of the Iranian Ayatollahs collapse? We have heard about a possible agreement with Hamas in the last day or two. Would that be possible? If yes, what would it mean? What is the future of the Middle East and the Abraham Accords? What would be an agreement? How would be, I would say, how would be an agreement between Israel and Syria look like? Will normalization between Sunni Arab states and Israel continue? And of course, another question is, what would President Trump do? How did this war affect, if at all, the concept of nuclear proliferation? What does it mean for other cases of nuclear proliferation? Everyone will have 12 minutes to speak. Please don't go beyond that time. Then I will allow each speaker to talk for 2 minutes in reaction to what each speaker heard. And then it will be open to the audience for questions and answers. As Steve pointed out, please either raise your hand to speak up or write down your question in the chat. The first speaker will be Dr. Joseph Olmert, followed by Dr. Rabil, then Dr. Hendelman, and finally Dr. Navarro. Without further ado, Dr. Olmert, I call on you to be the first speaker.
Thank you very much. And as usual, in an event like that, I want to thank again my very good friends, Steve and Luis, for establishing this great place and leading it. I think that this is a very important place, exactly in days like this, when academic freedom is in such danger in this country. And I also want to make a point about the distinguished panel that we have, the three colleagues, the luminaries. But allow me to especially mention Liora Hendelman-Baavur. She is a Jewish housewife at 7 p.m. in Israel now, but she's giving us airtime, which is precious because Liora is #1 world-renowned expert on Iran, and that doesn't take away anything from the other participants in our discussion. So now I start my 12 points, Luis, my 12 minutes. Okay, let me start with the first point. I was one of those people in Israel and outside of Israel, and I should say it, who did not believe that Prime Minister Netanyahu would do what finally he did about Iran. After 16 years of endless talking, speeches, and presentations about Iran, the idea was that he's not going to do what he said that he would do, but he did. And for that, he deserves all the credit. I would say also that by the same token that he deserves the credit for the decision about Iran, he deserves all the condemnations for the 7th of October, 2023. And the point that I want to make here is not to get into this debate, which is now the dominant discussion in Israel, yes, Bibi or no Bibi Netanyahu, but because he is going to play such an important role in the near future about what is happening, one cannot ignore the centrality of him in the overall configuration that we talk about. Because if the Israeli elections will take place on time, which is in November of 2026, there's plenty of time for Netanyahu to make decisions that will affect the future of Israel, but also the future of the entire Middle East. So point number one about that is the decision to do whatever in Iran from a domestic Israeli perspective was not a problem. And the reason for that is that there was a great deal of Israeli support for something to be done about Iran, for the obvious reasons. That was not a question for him in terms of taking a decision like that that would put in danger his government. All kinds of reasons why he delayed the decision, but that's not important anymore. It's not relevant at any rate. So he did not have a problem about making this decision about Iran. But now is the time for him to show that the leadership that he displayed in the case of Iran will carry him through to deal with other issues that we talk about with regard to the Middle East in the near future. And in particular, the question of Gaza. Let me say a word here about what I call, and maybe some people would not like to hear it, and maybe some people will ask about it. That's fine. What I call the extreme right wing in Israel, the parties led by Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich. For them, the real important issue of national security has never been Iran, nor is it now. It is whatever happening in every outpost in Judea and Samaria. Yes, I know it's bad what I'm saying. I know it sounds very kind of severe, critical of them, but that's what it is. And they are the ones who are basically keeping the pressure on Netanyahu not to make decisions about Gaza that should have been taken already and will have to be taken. And maybe the visit on Monday, in a few days' time in DC, will speed up these decisions. He has to make decisions about Gaza. And in my mind, the decision is to end this war, which has achieved almost everything that it could achieve, in return to once and for all returning all the hostages, not waiting for 60 or 90 or 100 days or any other time. He has to make this decision, but this decision will have to be the beginning of a bigger decision about what would be and should be the Israeli strategy about the general political solution about Gaza and the Palestinian issue. The question really is, Bibi Netanyahu, is he ready to this decision? After what he did about Iran, one should not rule out that he will also take the plunge and say once and for all something that will force these Ben-Gvir and Smotrich guys to make their decisions. But you cannot play for time anymore. It has to be a decision, and the decision will have to lead to something bigger with regard to the Palestinian issue. I'm not getting into what could be those solutions because this might be beyond the scope of this discussion, but clearly, exactly because of the much better position of Israel today, after the great victory in the case of the war against Iran, and it was a great victory for Israel, Netanyahu is in a better position as the leader of Israel and the state of Israel altogether to be more creative in thinking about solutions to the Palestinian issue that may have to take also some risks from the position of Israel. And that will be a real test of his leadership, on top of the test that he passed with regard to Iran. And that brings me to the third point that may be the one before last of this presentation. And I look at the watch all the time. Luis, I am on time. The relationships with the US. The Israeli relationship with the US, again, is a huge subject that is going beyond the scope of this presentation. They move between two extremes, independence and dependence. Something has to be said here, which again may not be to the liking or perhaps everybody. Israel has become too dependent on the US. And Israel is too dependent on the US at a time when the US is becoming less and less friendly towards Israel. My friends, we got a reminder with what happened in New York. And I hate to quote myself, but I wrote already 3 or 4 years ago about the end of the Jewish Golden Medina in America. The Jewish era in America is over. We are losing the American public opinion. Why is it? A lot of reasons. American demographic changes, cultural issues, whatever. The fact of the matter is that now we are having a president in the US who is pro-Israel, but he is pursuing all kinds of policies that by definition are not good for Israel now and will be even less good for Israel in the future. And when we talk, therefore, about Israeli decisions as to what will happen in the future, we have to take into account that our scope of maneuverability as a nation with regard to making decisions that will have to create problems with other nations, this scope of maneuverability has been narrowed in recent years. The American-Israeli alliance is challenged. The two most significant political trends in America, MAGA on the right and the woke progressives on the left, are not on our side. I will repeat, they are not on our side. A lot of the appointments of Trump are very good to Israel. A lot of them are very bad to Israel. Trump is whimsical. Trump has already did things that are not good for Israel. Trump has done things that are very good to Israel. So in the sphere of the relationship between Israel and the US, we need to have a leadership. And that's again a challenge to Netanyahu that will be able to talk to American public opinion as well as to the American administration in a way that will be more bipartisan than what it has been for the last few years. Bipartisanship was the basis of the American-Israeli alliance. This bipartisanship is shattered, is challenged. It's no more there. We need to do whatever we can to restore, if not all of it, which is impossible, parts of it. We shall need these relations with America because we are losing ground on other issues, and not necessarily because it is our fault. As a matter of fact, it is not, but that's what happens. And that brings me to the last point. It was in 2009 that a British journalist by the name of Martin Bright, who is on my Facebook list of friends, At that time, the editor of the New Statesman, left-wing, pro-labor magazine, very famous, wrote an article about the shape of things to come, the alliance between the progressives of the left and the jihadist Muslims. How dangerous it is to Israel, but how dangerous it's going to be to the rest of the Western world.
1 minute.
My friend, in America these days, something even more dangerous is emerging. MAGA is the right-wing isolationist. The jihadists already are supporting the other side. Obviously, they are against us, and the woke of the left. So we have a problem here in America and other countries that was not created by the war in Gaza, that was exacerbated by this war. It is a problem called anti-Semitism, of course, nothing original here. And that also comes into the overall consideration of Israel's situation and options. We are the state of the Jewish people. And therefore, we have also to take into account the Jewish people outside of Israel as much as we should expect the Jewish people outside of Israel to put us, Israel, on the forefront of their considerations. My friends, thank you very much for your attention. Louis, it was exactly 12 minutes.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Yossi. You've been great. Next, I call on Robert. Dr. Rabil, it's your turn.
You're on mute, Robert. Mute.
Robert, you are mute. Unmute yourself.
Yeah, I am sorry about that. I always mute yourself when somebody is talking. Let me speak about the geopolitical condition of the Middle East, and I will speak a little bit about U.S. And Israel relation and U.S. and Arab relations. Stephen said, there is a fallout of the war, and we say now it's a war. Really, this war has been going on for quite some time, really has been going on since 1979, since Khomeini took over or seized power in Iran. And more so, as a matter of fact, the Hamas attack really, it opened what I put in an op-ed in a Jerusalem Post. It really put action, in the ideology of Iran and all the Islamists. I myself believe Islamism in its variant forms, whether Hezbollah, whether Islamic Jihad, whether Hamas, whether the Salafi, especially the Salafi Jihadi, they cannot reconcile themselves with Israel as a nation for the Jews. This is something, it's very much confirmed by me through history, through whatever they say. So whatever Israel did, as a matter of fact, it was a defensive war. But more than that, as a matter of fact, let me take you further. I looked at Israel, as a matter of fact, as an engine of change. It was Israel that brought the change in the Middle East. And as someone who was born in Lebanon and with family in the United States, being my grandfather born here and my family came to the United States in the 19th century, this is how I perceived the Israeli. And I perceived really what they have done, neither United States nor any other nation could have done. And that's exactly mainly defeating Hezbollah or dealing a severe blow of Hezbollah. You have no idea how Hezbollah became. Hezbollah became not only, a militia or a terrorist organization or whatever. It became mainly a global militant power, really, with its arms in Europe, in Latin America, and in many places. And they had tons of weapons directed at Israel. And here, let me just highlight one thing again from an intelligence perspective, really. And sorry if I say that, some really here in the United States, and I believe in Israel, since I spoke with some Israeli colleagues of mine, yes, what happened on October 7 is terrible. But also the other scenario, if you want to look at, had Hamas really, instead of doing what it did, and it moved north, and had Hezbollah launched a simultaneous attack, Israel would have really suffered greatly. And this came from the intelligence in the United States and intelligence from Israel. And I do believe that. So what Israel did, as a matter of fact, this fight has been really methodical, really good, taken off Hezbollah, Hamas, and whatever remaining of Hamas. And most importantly, as a matter of fact, Syria. Let's not forget Syria. Syria has not been only, a country, of Assad. It has been really the cradle of Arab nationalism. And Syria under Assad and under Bashar al-Assad, really, somehow it brought all the opposition forces and it gave the most important things to Iran and to Hezbollah, strategic depths, which is extremely important for Hezbollah. And this is why Hezbollah now, it feels that it lost a lot of leverage. Now with the Assad regime gone, with Hezbollah gone, that's a new, really complete, and let me use the word, radical transformation of the Levant, really. And I hope now, with whatever United States is doing, and I know Tom Barak, you know, he is of Lebanese descent, and I know what he's talking with Al-Shara and some people, and I know he was in Lebanon twice, and he's going now, I believe, in July 10. So I know what's going on, and I hope really that you have certain coordination and cooperation with Israel so as to usher somehow a new security regional order in the Middle East prior to the peace. Now, some are saying, you know, peace with Syria, you know, and I see it all the news, you know, yes, it might do this, it might do that, it might happen. I think, listen, let me tell you this. Syria is not going to sign peace now because really Al-Shara government is really weak. And you have a lot of problems with Al-Shara. And more so, Al-Shara also gave a statement that really he cannot sign a peace without the Golan Heights. And I don't think the Golan Heights, Israel is going to give up, you know, anytime soon. So what you need to do now is to create certain normalization of relations based on mainly somehow, you know, if you go back to the 1974 disengagement agreement between Assad and Israel really observed it and Assad observed it, mainly to protect the border of Israel. So this is something, this is what I would like to see in the time being. Regarding Lebanon, again, you know, Barak was there. Barak is handling the file of Syria and he's an ambassador to Turkey, but also indirectly, really, he's handling the file of both Syria and Lebanon. Now, the most important thing for United States has been mainly for Hezbollah to surrender its weapon. Here you have a lot of complication. You know, Naim Qasim, the new general secretary general, he said no, and this and that. But let me tell you this. You have a committee that has been established yesterday. And that committee, it had, you know, a representative from the president, the prime minister, and the House Speaker. And it's about merely trying to go ahead and act on Barak's conditions or Barak's offer. And here, let me tell you exactly what's happening. What's happening is that, you know, Hezbollah has agreed, not fully, but has somehow said, okay, I am open to one thing, is that if we give up our weapons, we need Israel to withdraw at the same time from the 5 points. Lebanon and Israel have 13 points of dispute, mainly territorial dispute, but you have 5 points, you know, there. So when I look at Lebanon, you know, and Israel, I feel that, again, you need the cooperation between United States and Israel. And I really think that this is where the Lebanese government, and I say it open. As a matter of fact, I have been on dozen on interview with the Arabic media, and I'm open, really, and open, you know, really. I say that, you know, Lebanon today is at a reckoning, really. He's facing a reckoning, and the government of Lebanon has to take the decision, the determination, finally, to say, forget, you know, stringing out the negotiation, forget, oh, if this, if that, you know, and to say, listen, it's about time, you know, Hezbollah has to surrender its weapon. Now, I know that from the Lebanese army, you have some really, they would like to do that. The president of Lebanon, he's worried about a fight. You know, I don't care if you have a fight, because really, at the end of the day, really, Hezbollah has to surrender, you know, its weapon. Although I think that Lebanon will not sign a peace treaty before Saudi Arabia sign a peace treaty. But what you can do now, really, what you can do, you can demarcate the border. By the way, in 2019, I went there, I spoke with the State Department, I went there, and I studied the border, and I put it in an article out. And I felt it's gonna happen, and really, it happened. And now I think now, really, you know, this is something Israel, United States, and Lebanon can work at, is that, you know, before anything else, of course, alongside, let me say, alongside other things, is that to demarcate the border. Because Lebanon and Israel now, yeah, they have a maritime border, it's demarcated, and now the land border. And I know, because, listen, from Israel, I saw the border, from Lebanon, I saw the border. And in 2009, I was there and I walked it all. I really think that it will reduce tension, a lot of tension, it will be reduced. Now, let me move to the Arab Gulf here, really. The Arab Gulf, really, if you look at the position of Saudi Arabia and UAE, as a matter of fact, they have positioned themselves in the middle. They don't want to be against Iran, and of course, they don't want to be against United States or Israel. And if you look that Saudi Arabia has condemned Israel's attack at Iran, and Saudi Arabia has condemned Iran's attack on Qatar. So mainly the Saudi, really, and this is where I go, you know, to some extent with Yosef, in that the Saudi really, they really would like to have normalization of relation with Israel. They believe that you have the leadership of the Gulf now. They really think that, you know, somehow whatever happening now, technology is changing a lot of things. The geopolitics of the world is changing. The world has moved already in a multipolar way, and they feel that having Israel on their side and the technology of Israel and a power as Israel, as a matter of fact, although Israel is consumed with the Palestinian conflict, is good for them. And I know that, and I speak confident of that. So I really feel myself, this is where Israel is going to decide what the Saudi, their decision is going to be. And what do I mean by that? How they are going to deal with the Palestinian issue, really. And this is for Israel to decide. And I think that if you can, and because the Israeli, and let me say this, the Saudi and the Gulfi, especially the Saudi, they don't care if the Palestinians have the West Bank, quarter of the West Bank. They don't care. They need somehow a package of normalization. And I know pretty sure they're going to go ahead and sign a peace. Now, regarding the relationship with Iran, look, listen, before even China brokered somehow an agreement between the two, you had a good friend of mine, the former prime minister of Iraq. We worked together in Washington. He really, as a matter of fact, he's the one who brought together the Saudi and the Iranians. And many meetings and a good number of meetings took place in Iraq. Now, why the Saudis are meeting with them? The Saudis, I know now, they need stability in the Gulf. They don't want to have a war. They don't want to have a war, really. So from this stand, as a matter of fact, the Saudi, and this is why I mentioned the Saudis, I want to be positioned in the middle. Now, of course, the Gulfi, the Bahraini, the UAE, they will never do anything to compromise their relationship with Israel. But also, you have to remember one thing. Every time, you know, the UAE meet with the Israelis, if the leader, his brother, the chief of intelligence, he'll go to Tehran. Or Tehran, the officials, they come and visit. So they're playing in the middle. And they know now, since the world is going multipolar, they are taking a position. And let me hear just from a geopolitical global perspective, put it as I see it. The world now is no longer split between two camps. Yes, United States is the most powerful, but we see now a trajectory. And that trajectory we'll see, I can see, and everybody can see, yes, China's going to have a role, Russia's going to have a role, but also what's happening today, you have other countries now, especially after the Ukrainian war. Other countries now, I see now today some kind of a treaty like the one took place after World War II, Yalta, another Yalta. But that Yalta today that's happening, it's not going to have only, you know, the big power. It's going to have big power and regional power like Brazil, like India, like Saudi Arabia, like Turkey, where their reach is going to go beyond their regional reach. So this is why, as a matter of fact, when I look at Saudi Arabia, when I look especially at Saudi Arabia, they are at a position now to play not only regional role, but also international role. And in that role, as a matter of fact, Israel could help them in many ways, given if you have some kind of
your time is up
moving forward. So at the end of the day, what do I say myself? I would like to see a regional security order in the Middle East, and I hope it will go in that direction. You have good signs, but also we have to be very cautious about it. And also I would like to see another security, you know, regional order in the Gulf, which hasn't been really taken shape. And it has to take shape some way or another. And at this point, I thank you. And thank you, Louis, for this.
Thank you so much, Robert.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very interesting. Now I have the pleasure of calling on Dr. Liora Hendelman. Dr. Hendelman, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I want to thank Dr. Fleischman and Dr. Sussman and to the Palm Beach Center for organizing this timely and important conversation. I'm honored to join such a distinguished panel, especially alongside my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Yossi Olmert, whose insight into the region continue to inspire. We are speaking barely 10 days after the announcement of the ceasefire that's still being assessed in real time. The dust hasn't settled, the numbers are still being counted, but already we can identify key shifts, fragilities, pressures, and structural exposures that may shape the Iranian regime's trajectory in the months and years ahead. In the time that I have, I don't want to introduce a forecast, but I want to introduce a reading of early signals about what has been shaken, what remains intact, and where rapture may yet to emerge. Unlike past episodes of shadow warfare or isolated strikes, the 2025 Israel-Iran confrontation marked the first sustained symmetrical military exchange involving strikes on Iranian soil since the Iran-Iraq War of the 1980s. It is true that Iran has faced attacks before. In January 2024, Pakistan launched retaliatory airstrikes, but those were geographically limited. What distinguishes the June 2025 conflict is obviously its scale, its duration, and strategic depth. Israeli forces hit core IRGC infrastructure across multiple provinces across Iran. And for decades, Iran had operated under the illusion of strategic insulation. Its model, that can be called layered deterrence, relied on proxies, missile threats, and escalation ambiguity. Even the assassinations of Qasem Soleimani and Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, the architect of Iran's nuclear weapons program in 2020, were framed as isolated blows. But this war exposed the regime directly. It wasn't about symbolic revenge. It was all about vulnerability. Institutionally, the regime endured. The Supreme Leader's office remained in control. The IRGC stayed loyal. There was no elite defection or visible fracture in that respect. But the war has introduced a kind of strategic exhaustion. Iran's deterrence no longer feels unshakable. Hezbollah, as previously mentioned, absorbed major losses. Iraqi militias were activated but encountered backlash. The Houthis remain active, but their coordination with Tehran is less consistent. Even Hamas has taken a more autonomous course. And the result is fragmentation. The axis of resistance, once cohesive, now appears overextended. Iran's influence today leans more on symbolism than on operational power. Equally significant is the internal psychological cost. The regime presented the war as a moment of national unity, but beneath that narrative, a deep ambivalence took hold, particularly among activists both in exile and also observers and citizens inside Iran. Some feared the war would derail the struggle for freedom. Others saw the strikes on IRGC and intelligence infrastructures as rare blows to the core of repression. Still others mourned, not for the regime, but for the homeland, scared and exposed. These conflicting responses, shared in encrypted messages, VPN-linked feeds, and moments of silence, even calls from rooftops in Tehran, didn't just reveal disagreement. They revealed emotional disorientation. And yet, among all this, a recurring call that this moment should not be wasted, that the regime's illegitimacy must be confronted head-on. The state, meanwhile, framed the war as an extension of the sacred defense, and this is the term for the Iran-Iraq war, steeped in heroic sacrifice. But for many, especially young Iranians, this war felt staged to preserve the regime and not the nation. Trust was already depleted. The war deepened that breach through visible military failure, economic strain, and the perception that Iranian lives were again spent in service of a regime's strategic image. In response, the regime leaned into what it knows best, and this is spectacle. It staged mass funerals, invoked Karbala, the wrapped military failure and theological symbolism. And the Supreme Leader Khamenei described the war not as a misstep, but as a divine test. But the symbols no longer compel. Iran's youth still speak the grammar of the regime, but their belief is in its meaning has faded. At the same time, official messaging portrayed the war as both surgical and triumphant. Civilian targets were said to be avoided, even as media paraded damage to Israeli cities as proof of deterrence. And I want to share with you a couple of images, if I may.
You may.
Okay, I hope that you can see it. This image was posted by Iran's Arabic language outlets just after a missile struck a residential building in Beersheba, killing 4 civilians. And this was minutes before the ceasefire started. And the caption read, "We fired the last shot." This wasn't a claim of restraint. It was a claim of authorship, of pride in destruction, precisely as the ceasefire took hold. In another incident, I will show another one. Okay. This obviously is not new. Ever since October 7th, billboards in central Tehran declaring such messages. In this case, it says, "We are the masters of war." And in Hebrew, "Israel must be wiped from the face of the earth." And this is the beginning of the story. This isn't a battlefield strategy. It's ideological performance designed for domestic affirmation and international spectacle. And I want to show another one. This is from a billboard
They're not
Shiraz.
showing, Liora, they're not, only the first one was showing.
Okay, so just a second. This one is especially important.
Okay.
A billboard from in Shiraz. And here Netanyahu is showed kneeling before the Sassanid Emperor Shapur I. And the Hebrew reads, "Kneel before the Iranians." In the background, I'm not sure if you can see it, between the horse and Netanyahu, appears Donald Trump, silenced and reduced. And this is more than messaging, it's a myth-making. The regime is casting itself as the inheritor of civilizational power of the ancient Persian Empire. And it's not just about asserting strength, but staging historical dominance. And beyond that, beyond these images, the press followed in Iran, and front pages the day after the ceasefire headlined with victory and Iran's flag raised high, markets smile again. So these entire framing of the war and its aftermath is projected by the regime as obviously a victory. And we can say that despite these images, the economic situation in Iran is still witnessing a major blow. Oil exports are in decline. Gulf shipping became riskier. Infrastructure demands to be taken care of, and inflation surged. The real is weakened. I don't know if you can see the pictures from today's stock exchange in Tehran. It's all red. Unemployment among youth is on the rise, and the regime's capacity to subsidize daily life, whether it's fuel or bread or electricity, is now under renewed strain. This is not just an economic downturn. It is a slow structural erosion of one of the last levers of the regime that it can use to retain passive public compliance. And if to share,
are you trying to show the last slide, the 5th slide, or not?
It's not. I already mentioned it.
Okay.
So it's not a big deal.
All right.
So
No, I was wondering.
Stop the share. Okay. So I'll say that.
You have 1 minute. Yeah.
Okay. So I would say that the regime following the war also witnessed an erosion of revolutionary legitimacy. Ideologically, the regime has entered a state of drift. Its revolutionary narrative, anti-imperialism, martyrdom, moral certainty no longer resonates as it once did. The slogans still circulate, but their emotional charge, we can say, is almost gone. Younger Iranians reject not just the state, but the theological scaffolding behind it. Even some clerics are uneasy with the circumstances as they developed at the moment. And the regime has asked them to consecrate missiles and bury dissent, and many now do so reluctantly. So just to close everything that I said, the Islamic Republic survived the war. It absorbed strikes. It retaliated. It still governs. But survival is not stability. We may not be in the post-Islamic Republic moment yet, but we are entering a post-consensus phase, one where the regime governs through habit, not vision, through enforcement, not persuasion. This war forced the regime out of its posture of confident projection. It revealed its vulnerabilities militarily, economically, and symbolically. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hendelman. That has been really, really interesting. We appreciate it. And thank you for your time. Next, I call on Eric Navarro to be the last speaker. Eric, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Luis. And it's impossible for me to follow those up, but I will try. I'll try to be very brief. First, Luis, you introduced me earlier as Dr. Navarro. I appreciate the honorary doctorate, but I have not achieved that yet, but I'll take it. And then
okay. You are an honorary doctor of the Palm Beach Center.
Thank you very much. I wear that with pride. I apologize for being a little dressed down. You caught me while I'm supporting an exercise for the Marine Corps. As Luis said, I'm still a lieutenant colonel in the reserves. So I wanted to view the 12-day war. Let's start with a military assessment or understanding of what we just witnessed. First, let's look at its tactical execution matched with strategic clarity. The execution was brilliant. I did some research. Israel flew over 1,000 sorties, and to my knowledge, they didn't lose a single aircraft, whether to enemy fire or even just to malfunction or accident, which is incredible. They were able to achieve air supremacy in a day and have unfettered access to Iranian airspace and then prosecute targets at will. Nobody thought they could do that. And that sends a message going forward, right? They were able to degrade key Iranian targets, air defenses, nuclear infrastructure, IRGC command nodes. Their operations on the ground, brilliant planning with they had drone facilities building and launching drone attacks from within the borders of Iran. They were able to target IRGC generals. Then on top of that, you had the US join the fight for the strikes on the nuclear sites, demonstrating resolve and really indicating a strategic inflection point. But what you see there, and President Trump talked about this, I think Bibi Netanyahu also did, there was a combined arms approach and coordination between Israel and the US in a military fashion that we haven't seen before. So you had the public statements by both leaders that were playing off each other, sometimes to feint. Like, for example, the reports of rifts, the report when President Trump said he'll give Iran 2 more weeks, but then they struck within a day or two. All that's coordinated ahead of time. But then there's tanker refueling, there's intelligence sharing, there's electronic warfare, there's all kinds of different operability between the US and Israeli forces that, again, we haven't seen before, and I think sends a message going forward. The other thing, from a US perspective, it showed to me that US has, at least the administration of Donald Trump and the National Security Council, have learned the lessons from the Iraq and Afghanistan conflicts, right? So what were the problems there? We lacked a clear strategic objective, or the objectives changed over time. You had mission creep, right? You also, in the invasion to topple Saddam Hussein, there was the talk of, why are we attacking Iraq when they had nothing to do with 9/11? Here with Iran, you had a clear threat to both regional US interests in the region, to our allies in the region, and to us. Let's not forget that Iranian forces helped kill Americans while in Iraq. They supported the militias there. They also taught them how to create explosive form penetrators that were devastating, that created devastating IEDs that pierced through our armored vehicles. I was there. I remember having the briefs and having to prepare for how to counter those IEDs. They also sought to assassinate our president. So there was a clear threat. So very different than the Iraq war, right? But then also no mission creep. So the president stated out a clear strategic goal, resourced the mission to achieve those goals and the objectives, and then did not allow for the success of that to build into something like, for example, full-on armed regime change, or then nation building in some type of Western democracy framework. None of that is going on. We could talk later. The earlier gentleman talked about the anti-Semitism displayed both on the woke left, and then elements of what we call now the woke right on MAGA, right? Those influencers on the woke right warned of World War III. They warned of massive retaliation from Iran. None of that was ever going to happen. They have no idea what they're talking about, and their influence should be ignored. They have a loud platform because social media elevates basically morons. And so we have to guard against the kind of influence or overstating the influence that these folks have. So again, strategic clarity that has really rebalanced the nature, the power within the Middle East. And we'll talk about what that means. So ramifications, right? The Tehran, the regime has been exposed. They are a paper tiger. They always were. They relied on a proxy network that has been systematically dismantled. The Houthis remain the strongest element still in place. I argue that we should continue to prosecute and dismantle the proxy networks, even in the face of the ceasefire. I don't think that you can take out Tehran's nuclear program, but then leave it with the ability to strike in a conventional way. I just wrote a piece that's on Middle East Forum Observer, arguing that any negotiations, any deal, any type of actions or agreements made with the Iranian regime have to also demand that they stop supporting their proxies. And then we have to maintain pressure and force compliance with that. The region has been reset, right? Everyone is watching and learning from the 12-day war. Those that sat by and didn't participate are gauging who is the stronger horse. and that's clearly Israel and the US. There are obviously issues, but you're already seeing indications that are going to lead to next steps. There are reports of Abraham Accords 2.0. There's reports of the potential deal with Syria and Saudi Arabia. Obviously, that's contingent on most likely the ceasefire or the stopping or ending of the war in Gaza. But for all intents and purposes, the region recognizes who is the stronger power. Iran is weakened, and I will say I'm on record as I personally believe we should push for regime change. I'm not talking in Iran. I'm not talking about us affecting it through kinetic means. I'm talking about putting public pressure, publicly calling for it, supporting any opposition forces on the ground, doing an influence campaign that plays up the weakness of the Iranian regime, and supporting anybody we can within the borders that can rise up. Yes, there are risks with all of these actions. There are risks in everything. We can mitigate those risks, right? We have forces forward deployed. We have a new military and strategic cooperation with Israel, and everybody else knows who is the stronger force. Also, take a step back beyond just the region. In the realm of great power competition, Russia and China have seen the resolve demonstrated by both Israel and the US. This is a reestablishment of strategic deterrence. President Trump, in the wake of this, has already said, if Iran seeks to try to rebuild their nuclear weapons program, we will hit them again, right? That's the essence of deterrence. You have to demonstrate that you're willing to take the actions necessary, and then your adversaries have to measure whether or not you mean it and whether or not you will do it again. I believe that has been put in place. If you notice, the reactions of Russia and China were muted. There were condemnation statements, but almost no support. This is even while they saw their client state get knocked down. Russia relies on Iran for drone and missile technology. China relies on Iran for its oil, but yet they didn't aggressively step in. That's a signal. That's a signal that they don't seek direct confrontation with the US in this region. They will seek to undermine and infiltrate, but whenever we step up, whenever the US matches clear strategic objectives with the will necessary to achieve those objectives, these adversaries back down. There's a new balance of power in the region, but it's also tenuous. It requires us, the US, Israel, and other allies in the region to take concrete steps to kind of codify this new balance, to make it enduring, right? Abraham Accords 2.0, economic investment. The Saudis, the Gulf states, others are looking to diversify away from just oil, right? That's the Prince MBS and his 2030 project, right? Seeking to build AI data centers in the region. And that was if you recall, before the 12-day war, President Trump's foreign trip across the Middle East was all about securing economic and security cooperation. Well, now they can press forward with that in the wake of this conflict. So I'm going to conclude there. We should marvel at the ability of the US and Israel to take the fight to a direct threat, eliminate almost all of their air defenses, and gain air supremacy in a day, and have carte blanche to attack at will, severely weakening the Iranian regime. And now it's a question of, will the US and Israel capitalize on the outcome of the battle? And with that, I'll open up for questions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Eric. That has been really, really good. I appreciate it. We appreciate it. And now I would like to give to each speaker 2 minutes time to react to what you have heard from other speakers. So, but first I would like you to, if possible, to not first, but just within that context, to answer a question: what would be the future of nuclear proliferation in the world? Because this, the world couldn't stop the Pakistanis and the North Koreans from developing a nuclear weapon. and then when we have a non-proliferation treaty. What is going to be the future of nuclear proliferation? Because that is one of the major, and remember, even Barack Obama was very afraid of the problem of nuclear proliferation. I remember that was one of the first things he said when he came to power. So that is my question, but please react to other speakers, 2 minutes each, okay? Yossi Olmert, Dr. Olmert, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I will leave others to relate to this proliferation issue. Very, very quick resume, survey of some points here. With regard to Syria, I'm in a way a veteran of negotiations with Syria, some of them through government, some of them in different ways. I'm aware of the negotiations with other people did with Syria. No, there's not going to be peace treaty with Syria, and there's no question that if there is any agreement to be with Syria, it would basically be based on the agreements of 1974, which ended the war of 1973, Yom Kippur War, and it will have to give Israel security benefits that reflect our superior military situation, and also the fact that one of the great achievements of the Netanyahu government, and I should say it again, is what they did with Syria after the fall of Bashar Assad. That they took positions within Syria itself. Instead of relying on promises in the future about security, they are creating a security regime for Israel within Syria, which is a much better situation for Israel to negotiate the future than if it wasn't. I just read today that the IDF established another important security position in South Syria. I also read that in the last few hours while we talk, there have been more attacks on Hezbollah in South Lebanon. So the second point is about the Saudis. Yeah, I agree, of course. Robert Rabil is always as brilliant as you can imagine, as we know him. I would still call some caution about Saudi Arabia and throw a little bit something else to the fray here, and this is that maybe because Iran is so much weaker now, or it is weaker, the Saudis may be losing an incentive to speed up any normalization with Israel, because why do they need it now? If the fear of Iran might have been in the basis of the idea of normalization with Saudi Arabia, the fear is less so now. So I would call caution about that. I'm not debating the ability of it to happen or that it will happen, but I would call caution into this. The likelihood of it, in my opinion, has not been increasing after the war, maybe even decreasing. With regard to what Mr. Navarro, Honorary Dr. Navarro said, so look, I have a different approach about what exactly preceded the beginning of the war. There's been a lot of cooperation between the US and Israel, obviously. By the way, General Kurila is again in Israel, or at least he was there last night, so it's interesting, the commander of CENTCOM. But the point really is that in the overall history of Israel, big decisions by Israeli prime ministers had to be, or were supposed to be, coordinated between us and our great allies. And in this case, and I'm just, again, throwing a little bit of a different opinion here, in this case, Netanyahu definitely heard from the Americans, you can start whatever it is that you plan in Iran. They knew about it, of course, they knew. But the decision by Trump to join actively the attack on Iran came only when he became convinced that Israel was winning. And I think that this is a lesson to be learned here. Trump goes with winners, and you need to show to him that you are a winner. Thank you.
Robert, go ahead. 2 minutes.
Thank you. Well, I like what Yosef said about Trump. Trump-like winner. Indeed, Trump-like winners. And broadly speaking, I agree with Olmert, with the exception of the Saudi. Really, Saudi Arabia has changed. Listen, I am a supervisor of 2 PhD students come from Saudi Arabia, and they are telling me things, and female students, and they're telling me things. Saudi Arabia is changing beyond our imagination. The way how this tribal, I would say Muslim, traditional, conservative society, it has made leaps today. And I really think that the future of Saudi Arabia is in a security order regional order, and that regional order has to, as a matter of fact, to have Israel in it. Of course, they have issues vis-a-vis Iran, and here this is where I go to Mr. Navarro or Dr. Navarro, and I'm happy to call him Dr. Navarro. He's a colonel, really. This is where they are worried about the Saudi, and this worry, as a matter of fact, goes to King Abdullah. It's about regime change. And I believe Eric knows it, what we did in Iraq, and what happened in Iraq and the mistakes we did with Iraq. And this is what the Saudi, if you go to Abdullah before, the king, he was against the invasion, against what's going to happen, what's going to come next. And mainly, from a historical perspective, the Saudi and us, am I for regime change? Yes. But am I worried about regime change? Of course I'm worried about regime change, because history tells us, listen, you might have some worse people than the Iranian regime. Look at the Bolshevik, look at other, history shows us, in certain situation, you could have worse. And again, the Iranian the opposition, really, it's not united. So yes, I agree with Eric to a certain extent, but it needs a lot of work. And I don't know if United States is going to go that far, really. Because again, you have to look at the domestic situation in United States, whether from the Democrat or the Republican, whether MAGA or others, they are fatigued from the Middle East. Let's not forget that. And you have, again, you have a push, and Trump know it. We have our biggest strategic threat is China. So Iran is a threat. Iran is this, Iran is that. But mainly our main strategic threat, is in China. And somehow you have in Washington, really, you have people, whether right, let me speak right, they feel that the Middle East, it always sucks us in. So this is why I think that for a regime change, I have mixed feelings. I'm not against it, but I have mixed feelings. Now, regarding Leona, I really enjoyed her, really. And I think that she gave a very good picture. She painted a picture of what's happening. But here I would say, as a matter of fact, even before the war, I looked at Iran and I saw that it lost its really revolutionary zeal, really, because the Iranian, they are, most of them are born after the Khomeini regime. And again, social media has changed.
Thank you, Robert.
All dynamics. One more thing, and I want to say, and Leona, just as really what you said, what you put at the picture, we fired the last shot. As a matter of fact, and I agree with you, I agree with the concept. They said we are the owners of the last shot. You know what I mean? Which I agree completely to what you said. They said, listen, we are here, and they are projecting their power. And as a matter of fact, it mainly stems out of vulnerability. And I totally agree with her. Thank you.
Yeah, terrific. Thank you, Robert. Leora, 2 minutes.
Okay, it will even be shorter. I just want to say that when it comes to regime change, we have to be very careful. It's not only that history in other places teach us that sometimes it's not as we wish for it to happen. It can bring the exact opposite. We thought in the past that eliminating the regime of Saddam Hussein will solve the problems. And we have, since 2003, in Iraq, chaos. We thought that solving the problem in Afghanistan with the Taliban, it will solve the problems there, but we saw that it's more complicated. We thought that in Egypt, they thought that if Mubarak will leave, then it will be great. Egypt will thrive. And in democratic elections, they received the Morsi from the Ikhwan, the Muslim Brotherhood. And now we have a military dictatorship there. In Syria, we thought that the problems will be solved. We had more than 12 years of internal war there. So in the Middle East, sometimes when you ask for one thing, you can get another, and it's not necessarily positive. Iran is a country of 90 million people, and to bring chaos in that fragmented country when there is no real opposition to take hold, and there is not even a tradition of a democratic and political system there with parties and democratic elections. They don't know they think they know. They maybe again try to wish for a better future, obviously, but it's not that simple. And I don't think that in the region and even beyond, to try and push and topple regimes, it's something positive. If you want to try to bring stability into the Middle East, then I think Israel, first and foremost, should try to interpret its achievements into diplomatic outcomes. And this is a good opportunity to do that with the Palestinians and, of course, other partners and countries in the region.
Thank you so much, Liora. Eric, 2 minutes.
All right. Seems like my comments stirred something, so I'm glad. My thing with regime changes, the errors were that we tried to affect it directly and then tried to rebuild in our own image with our own forces on the ground. I'm not calling for that. It doesn't even have to be anything significant other than publicly stating, yes, we would like the Iranian people to have a better future and a better government. Even that would be powerful. And also just be clear on the world stage. And I push back against the need or the constant desire for stability in the region. I want victory. That's true stability. The stability that we constantly are seeking normally means that it's just a pause in the fighting, right? And there's been agreements and there's been détente or no hostilities between the region, all while, or between countries, and all while the adversaries build up until the point when they're ready to attack, right? And I believe that that's what led to October 7th. That's what led, remember, Iran has been waging the proxy war for years without direct conflict between Iran and Israel and the US. I reject all that, and I say it's time to actually try to defeat our adversaries. That doesn't necessarily mean killing them all with kinetic force. That means destroying them over time using all different levers of national power. Diplomatic, economic, informational, intelligence, and sometimes kinetic. But the idea is to clearly state that we're seeking victory. That's the only way you're going to actually achieve true stability in the region. And then one couple of things, I totally agree with the assessment of why President Trump joined the fight with the strikes. He saw how it was going. But I say that's how the region behaves as well. That's how geopolitics is, right? Strength, peace through strength requires the strength part and requires you to demonstrate the strength. That's what all of the isolationists fail to recognize. Right? They think that we can live behind our oceans in the US and be secure. No, that's not how it happened. Okay. The strength and power of the US was created through war. Let's not forget that. Okay. Post World War II era, right? Cold War. Okay. Pushing our defenses forward deployed across the globe to defend our allies and our national interests. That's what we need to do with force here throughout the Middle East. Last point, I think that what this shows, and it's always the case, when the US has clear strategic objectives and demonstrates the will, we always have the capabilities to do what we want. We just oftentimes lack the will. When we marry up our capabilities with our will, we can achieve anything. And the true threat to that is the fifth column in our own borders, the ones that think that the US and West are the problem. So we have to solve that. I agree. If you're seeing what's happening in the New York City mayoral contest and across the West, as far as the Glastonbury stuff and the rise of anti-Semitism, we all know that anti-Semitism is the canary in the coal mine and leads to greater conflict down the road, and we must stamp it out right now. So thank you for your time.
Eric, thank you so much.
Luis, I need to
that was
allow
really
me
good.
to just for Luis for 1 second to
Wait.
intervene and say to Eric Navarro that I like every word he said, you know, and I understand now that he worked for the Middle East Forum led by my old friend Daniel Pipes. The spirit of Daniel Pipes is still there, Eric. That's great.
Yep, absolutely. And yeah, thank you.
Indeed. Now I would like to open it up to questions from the audience. You can either raise your hand or write your question in the chat.
Linda has a question she's already posted.
Who?
Linda
I'm sorry.
Geller-Schwartz.
Oh, yes. Linda Geller-Schwartz, you want me to read it? There is one question by Linda Geller. What real hope is there for a negotiated agreement with Iran that will be effective in stopping their eliminationist policy goals?
Let me say very briefly, and I would like to answer this, of course, others as well, it comes back again to what was mentioned by, of course, Liora with her brilliant presentation and Eric Navarro with his brilliant presentation. The Iranian regime is ideologically motivated to achieve goals. The only way, therefore, in which you can deal with a regime like that is to prove to them that the ability to achieve their goals is not there. And the ability to do that, or what should be done about that, is not, I'm afraid, through diplomatic negotiations, because they have been tried for so many years and it failed. It simply failed. It simply failed. And it leads me to say, and I would like to hear if others would comment on this later on, I don't know, I think that the war with Iran ended a few days ahead of time, but again, it's bravery to say it when you sit around your PC in a safe place and all that. The Iranian regime did not suffer enough to the point where they could even start questioning their ideology. And once they question their ideology, they would have to decide also what they do with the nuclear program much better than anything that will be offered to them in diplomatic negotiations.
Okay, anybody else would like to answer? Linda, I know, Amira, you have a question? Amira, you raise your hand.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
I can hear you. I don't know what the rest.
We can hear you. We can hear you.
We can hear you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. So my question, I would like to ask all of the speakers, and thank you very much for the presentation. I just wrote it down here. Yesterday, I was listening to a brief delivered by Dr. Johnny Moore. He's the executive chairman of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, GHF. It's the new humanitarian aid initiative that actually has been launched by Trump. So it's Trump's mandate. And he said that no leader in the world is more capable of delivering peace than Trump. And he said also that the Arab countries recognize it. I would like to ask each one of you if you agree or not, and what is your account relating to this statement?
Humanitarian aid. I wonder whether, I don't know, maybe Liora, you want to answer that question about the humanitarian aid, or maybe Eric?
Well, I think the question was really about whether or not we have a unique moment in time here with a unique leader to actually achieve peace deals. And I agree. That's been my position, is that the uniqueness of his approach, and you saw that on display during that first trip, right? Just breaking through previous established norms on how to approach these different regimes, the dialogue, the openness to making deals, even with folk, with bad people like the new leader of Syria, who is essentially Al Qaeda and ISIS, right? But the willingness to make deals that achieve our desired goals. Then you couple that with the strength demonstrated during this 12-day war. I think there's a unique moment here. That's why I say there's a. So earlier we were talking about how the Trump decided to do the nuclear attack because he saw Israel was winning so much. So that's what a true battlefield commander does. is you see when the battlefield changes and creates new opportunities that you didn't expect when it started, and then you seize those opportunities. Well, that's the same now on a strategic level, right? The success of this operation has created a moment of opportunity for the West, for the US and Israel and its allies in the region to push forward, make deals, bring more people under the tent of the West at a moment when they have to achieve, they can make the gains enduring, right? I think if we don't jump on this opportunity now, it'll fritter away and we'll lose it. And we may descend into the previous status quo that just is waiting for the next attack.
Amira,
Dr. Olmert,
let me answer Amira, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Amira, she's a friend of mine on Facebook. Listen, is Trump a capable man, unconventional man? Yes, I do that. I do think that. But also there is, if you look at the peace processes, Carter did broker a peace process. Let's not forget that. And other people brokered peace processes. When you have a peace process, yes, you have a capable man, and he is capable. But I always look myself at the components, at the dimension. For example, in Syria today, if you are going to ask me, will President Trump go ahead and make peace between Israel and Syria in his term? I will tell you no myself, because I know the region. I know the region very well. I know the Kurds, I know the Alawi, I know the Shia. I went to Syria, as a matter of fact, and I researched the Syrian refugee there, and I wrote a book about it. And I know how Syria is. It's going to take time. And I know that the indoctrination, and this is what I worry about, the indoctrination, you know, it's not going to go away, you know, in 1 day or 2 days or 1 year and 2 years. So here I agree with Eric, you know, yes, you have strength, you have this, but again, you have to look, you know, at what's happening. We have to be pragmatist. Again, in Lebanon, you ask me, can he go ahead and have peace in Lebanon? I can tell you now, and I speak very confident, no, it's not going to happen now. But is he preparing the path to happen, for this to happen in the near future? I will tell you yes. You know, again, with Saudi Arabia, the same thing. So mainly he is a president that I would look at. He is capable, and he is paving the way to future, probably, hopefully now, but to future peace accord that I think will happen given the radical changes they are taking place. And this is where I agree, you know, you have peace with strengths. And indeed, you know, I look at Israel, as a matter of fact, is the one that brought about the radical changes in the Middle East.
Okay, we have another question, and that is before, and that will be the last question before I handle the microphone to Steve. There is a question from Ben Sassman that says, why is Netanyahu risking too much adverse publicity in the US and Europe with the army's treatment of Gaza people by preventing them food and medical supply distributions? Dr. Olmert, the question is directed to you. Would you like to answer that? Dr. Olmert is gone?
I think he fell off.
He fell off. All right. So maybe somebody else would like to answer that question. Maybe somebody in the panel, or maybe outside the panel.
I think that maybe, can I just,
Yeah.
you're referring to the panelists now, just
No, but Amira.
You can answer, Amira, because you have an expertise as well.
Yes. Amira is an expert in this field too.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. I just one or two words. First of all, based, of course, on the research that I did, I just wrote a report about it. And second, going back to John Moore, he talked about this issue as well. So as you can see from this question, we see the critique here towards Israel, isn't it? Where it's in the question itself, we see the question, why there is no humanitarian aid to Gaza, right? This is the question, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
Sounds
something
like
that.
Okay.
Yeah. Something like that. And that is part of what usually people get in the media. Yeah.
So we can look at it looking at three levels. One level is that we have, like I said, from research that I did, and John Moore talked about it yesterday, we have a genuine problem of Hamas stealing aid, which is really sabotaging the aid's coordination within the Gaza Strip. Second, we have the problem, which was more evident previously, now with GHF less, but still it's evident because still GHF needs to coordinate with the Gazan people on the ground, which are being linked to Hamas. So in the past, there was a real problem with UNRWA, which was took active part in October 7th. And as a UN agency, humanitarian agency, it's a big problem. It's a major problem. So hopefully we'll see a change in this direction. Second thing, there is no, definitely, and he said it yesterday, and I interviewed people in the Israeli government, high senior officials, there is no hunger in Gaza. There is a problem of instability in terms of food security, but no hunger at all. And at the same time, we can see also where you see on social media these nice restaurants that are flourishing in Gaza. And this is not only AI, this is a reality, because in some parts of Gaza, Hamas is still controlling this area, food. So from one hand, there is no hunger, even more so Hamas is still controlling the food. And so the aid that is being delivered, like he said yesterday, is millions of boxes and food and medication every day. And one thing that I may add that I talked yesterday about it, a few journalists as well, we all the time so apologetic about how much, how many boxes, how much we do, and so on and so forth. One thing that is not on the table, and I did also a research with hostage families and talked with the government also about the hostages. What about the food security of the hostages that are dying now in Hamas captivity? Why no one is talking about? All the critique is towards humanitarian aid to the Gazan people, whereas we are talking about the Israelis and non-Israelis. Not only Israelis are in Hamas captivities, also other people from different ethnicities. They don't receive food, isn't it? So we don't.
I'm only going by what I read in the New York Times, and you know, they've reported on the hunger there. I mean, I'm not. I just know what I read in the paper, so that's why I brought it up.
Can I?
Ben's my brother, so someone should tell him to read another paper. I can.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You always got to question your information sources, right?
Which newspaper would that be?
You got
the Wall Street Journal.
Maybe sometimes, but you know, most of them are questionable. I just want to point out one thing from a military standpoint. I've never seen, or it's been extremely rare, where you're fighting in a war and you're also sending aid into that combat zone, right? That is why it's complicated. That's why Hamas plays upon that, because they want to portray the Israelis as the bad guys. You know, and you're seeing that the effects of that campaign on social media and throughout the West. I think personally, I'm extreme on this. You fight to win. And then after you win is when you take care of the people that are caught in the middle, right? We didn't drop humanitarian assistance on the Germans while we were advancing on Berlin, right? And so, and every conflict you ever think of, you have to decisively win before you then can provide the humanitarian assistance to the people that were affected. Also, the Palestinians are responsible for their leaders. Okay. Sorry, they are. I know a lot of people don't like to say that, but that's just it. We're not responsible. Israel's not responsible for who they have as leaders or who they allow to operate in their thing. Now, maybe obviously they're threatened and they can't rise up enough. Okay, but then that is all the more reason to seek to firmly defeat Hamas so that we can then actually help the Palestinian people, not before. Thank you.
Thanks.
Great.
Good
Luis.
Yes, I know Stewart Morrison has a question, but I know we are almost at the end of the program, and I don't know whether, Steve, you want to finish or relate to or let's ask the question that
if we can keep it
Morrison.
to a minute or so, I'd like to be on time for everyone.
The question is what is going on, you know, because yesterday the Pentagon actually reported that the attacks on Iran nuclear facilities actually set the program back only on 2 years, up to 2 years. Eric, maybe you are the person to answer that question. I mean,
well, yeah, I saw that report. I mean, that's what they're going to release, right? And that's you know, depends on the confidence of that. But that's all the more reason then to continue to press forward with what I said, right? Because yes, you've degraded their capabilities, but the regime still remains and will seek to rebuild their capabilities, right? So you have to continue to press your advantage until they capitulate fully. That's it. And you know, my other part is demonstrating the resolve now. They should think twice about rebuilding, because we, as President Trump says, we will do it again. We're prepared to do it again, right? And that's the entire essence of deterrence.
So that doesn't take your sleep away.
There are threats in the world. That's why I serve, right? So.
Very good, Eric. Okay, Ben,
Okay.
thank you so much to the speakers. Thank you, really. And Steve, the floor is yours to close the program. I appreciate the participation of the speakers and also the audience. Steve, the floor is yours.
Terrific. First thing I want to say is that I was the only one when I did my introduction at the beginning who didn't refer to Eric as doctor. So I feel like I should have, because everyone else thinks you should be a doctor. So there you go.
Thank you.
So thank you all for joining us today for today's very timely discussion and robust discussion. Certainly want to extend my sincere gratitude to Eric, Yossi, Liora, and Robert.
Steve, by the way, you didn't allow me to talk in the last 10 minutes. I don't know why. People questions and I was cut off, but at any rate, I appreciate the opportunity.
You disappeared for a moment somehow or another.
No, I didn't know that I was there. Okay, thanks so much. Bye.
No, I'm so sorry. See, we were looking for you when there was a question for you. For some reason you weren't there. Well, special thank you also to Luis for moderating the conversation. And most important, thank you to our audience. Your presence and engagement are what makes these webinars truly meaningful. Whether you asked a question, shared a comment, or simply listened, your participation helps advance the open exchange of ideas that's central to our mission. And as I said at the beginning, please visit palmbeachdemocracy.org to see the work that we've done. And your generous contribution, we are a 501c3, so your generous contribution can enable us to continue our work, including hosting very timely and impactful programs like this. Once again, thank you for being part of this important conversation. We look forward to seeing you in future events that we do. And good afternoon and good evening. And so that's it. So thank you all.
Thank you for your time.